Good morning, Kum Lena Blat Gemara. Today's daf is daf Ayin Gimel. This whole page talks about taruvas, about things getting mixed up. So we're talking about where not a carbon that is disqualified and cannot be brought to the mizbeach, gets mixed up with animals that are supposed to be a carbon. And basically, we say it depends what kind of animal it is. If it's if it's osaba, no, they all have to die. But if it's something which is only also to the mizbeach but permitted to people, we let it wander about, then we sell it, and so on and so forth. And the Gemara wanted to know, why don't we just say that it's bottle? Because we know that Mahat things are bottle b'rayv. Chad b'trei. You have one piece of tray with two pieces of kosher. Mahat it is kosher because you go after the roy. Why not over here? So we start talking about double shibud minyan. You sell animals sometimes or many times, individually, but sometimes you sell it collectively. So we conclude, according to everybody, the reason is because balei chayim chashivi. Because animals are chashiv, and chashiv, things that Rashi says do not become bottled. So we're up to the Ayin Gimel Amud Aleph on the bottom of the page. Says the Gemara, we're literally in the bottom of the page, 2 lines from the bottom. Says the Gemara, I don't understand. Okay, you have this group of animals over here, and you have over here one animal that's no good, and therefore we say that you cannot bring any of these animals to the mizbeach, and because it's chashiv, and chashiv things don't get bottled. So I have a very simple solution. Why don't we just say the nimsha? Let us just take one individual animal away from this entire group, and the name on. Let us say we have a rule called the parish, beru parish. We have a rule that anything that was parish, beru parish. You remember in Ksubas there, and other places that says, well, we had 9 stores that were selling kosher meat and 1 store that was selling treifa meat, and we said that in benimtza, if you found the piece of meat outside of the stores, we'll say that called the parish, beru parish. So don't focus on the whole group, because then obviously definitely there's a not kosher animal that's no good there in the group. But let's take one out and say called the parish, beru parish. Now, in Taisus and Psachim of Tesman Beis and the big machlekes Rishonim, just quickly, we have a concept called kavua, and that is that if everything is stationed in one place, for example, let's go back to the stores. This is the classical case. If you came home with a piece of meat, then your wife says, "Where did you buy this? A plain brown bag." You don't remember. So where did the suffix begin? The suffix began in the kavua. We know which store is treif. You just don't remember which store you walked into to buy this particular item. So the suffix started in a place which is kavua, and the isser is nikah. We know exactly which store it is, a treifa store. You just don't remember where you bought it. Then we say kol kavua. Anything which is kavua, so you can't even vatlak. It's a cost. We learn about we learn that over there, the whole thing. We try to kill a person amongst other people. And you had to, it had to be specific, and you're able to get that person. So we learn that kol kavua is a concept mahatayr. But what happens? That's it. 1 second, because it depends where the suffix started. There, the suffix started in the mokum hakavua. But if you found a piece of meat on the floor. So where did the suffix begin? Outside of the makom kavua, right? You found it outside. You found it in the street. Then we say called the parish, meruba parish. Then we have a machlekes Rishonim. We have what happens if you actually saw. Because you remember we talk about there was 9 tziburim, there were 9 piles, let's say, of matzah and 1 pile of chametz, and the mouse took one of them, you don't know, and went into the house, you don't know where it came from. So there we say again, if the suffix started where it was, kavua, if you found it somewhere else, the tzibur, then is we say called the parish. What happens if you actually saw it? Take it from the makom kavua. You saw the mouse take the tzibur, but you remember, you don't know what's what. You don't know anymore what's the chametz or what's the matzah. But you saw they took it b'fanenu. According to the thing b'fanenu, it's as if the suffix started with makom kavua, even though you picked it up now outside somewhere. You saw the guy walk out of the store with the food. You don't remember either where it came from. But the suffix you saw, but since the poil was found later in the street, we say that according to Taisus, if it's b'fanenu, it's considered as if it started in makom kavua. According to other Rishonim, even if you saw where it came from, the poil, your suffix started now outside, is called the parish. So when they want to ask the question, called the barupa v'nimsha, let's take it out. So according to Taisus, talking about taking it out, we're not saying that you should go physically take it out if it doesn't achieve anything. Because if you take it b'fanenu, it's like you're taking it from makom kavua. Talking about open the fence, open the gates, walk away, and let it just wander about on its own. So you don't see it leaving the Makkah Kavua. But the other Shem told Mamish, no, let it leave the Makkah Kavua. So what's going on here? The Nimsha, when you get Chabenayu, the name, let us say, called the Paj Ruba Padish. Says the Gemara, Nimshach, you want us l'chayda tzilak kavua. L'chayda, they were all piled together. It's kavua. Chol kavua method on me. So initially, the Gemara wanted to say is just go pluck one out. Go to the whole group. But I told you already, you jumped ahead. Just take one animal away, and then we'll say, okay, this animal is called a parish, a parish. So no, you can't do that because you took from one kavua. So you're right. Let's make them all move about. The name, and then we'll say called the Parish Parish. Either we pull it in front of us, or let's just open all the gates and fences. No, then each animal will wander about, and once it's left, they're sitting right here in this room, and you found in the backyard there, because they're all walking around. Now you'll say it's Parish. Now you'll say that it's Parish. Where am I taking it from? Not from the whole group. I'm taking it from once it left the group, from called the Parish. Now. There's different kinds of kavua. There's kavua that's mahatoida, and there's kavua that's midrabanan. This kind of kavua we're talking about over here is only midrabanan. Kavua mahatoida, that the trainer explained, is like the case in the 10 stores. You know which is a treifa store. It's there. It's always there. You know which is a treifa store. And of us, you don't remember where you bought it from. So that's a kavua. That's nika. That's mahatoida. We learned that out from the case where they want to play. Mashain Kane, this kind of kavua, which is all mixed together, mahatoida is bottle b'roiv. A tate is bottle b'roif. Now, us, the Rabbanan said we're going to treat this like kavua. So we're talking now here about a kavua midrabanan. And the Gemara asks, so then very simply, let us just make it go wander about, and take one for once it wandered about. What's the whole? Why you say you musu in the Mishnah, all these things? Amar Rava says, Rava Gzeida, you know what you're worried about? If we're going to say that you can make it wander about, let's say there's 11 animals there, 12 animals there, and they're all wandering about. What happens if Shema Yavoyu Yud Koinim Bevasachas? Okay, they each going to shech their own. 10 koinim will come. They'll shech individually, but then when they're going to go ahead and sprinkle the blood, they're all going to sprinkle the blood at the same time. And then we're going to say, since you always go after the roiv, definitely in those 10 animals that they shecht, now they're about to spray the blood. Definitely in those 10 animals, one of them is probably the one that's a problem. Shouldn't be on the mizbeach. And if they all did it, if they did it one in succession, no problem. Each one will say separately, called the parish, rule parish. But if they all did it in unison at the same time, and we come to spraying it possibly in the same time, we're going to have a problem. And therefore, you know what? We're not going to allow this kind of an eitzah of the parish. And they'll be makrid. In other words, so how do you understand that even though we're saying now, let's say, called the Parish, not the Pshad, the Isa disappeared. There's an Isa somewhere, but we're going to say the Isa is probably, in the rest. This individual one is not the one that's awesome, but there is an Isa, but it's there. However, and therefore the problem is, if we can have all 10, definitely there's an Isa in one of them. First you said the animal is kosher. I called the Parish Parish. And now you're going to say that since 10 minutes later when you're going to spray the blood, they're all doing it together. Suddenly the Isa came back. In other words, what the Gemara is saying here is, if we paskin that you go after the Raiv, then it all becomes mutter. So it doesn't get the Isa doesn't come back, it's gone. So Gemara says, you're right. You know what the Gzeid is? We're not worried about the spraying. Maybe 10 koinim will take the animals at the same time. And then definitely one of them is the Isser, is the Asr one, and therefore we're worried about it. How's it possible? We're talking about the animals are wandering about. It's possible that 10 koinim, that was the roiv of the roiv animal, should be taken by koinim exactly the same split second. Because if they're a second apart, then each one we look at it individually. We'll say called the parish, parish. But you're saying that we're worried that let's say there are 11 animals sachakul, 12 animals sachakul, and all the koinim will take them all at the same time, at the same second. And the Isis is one of those animals, but each kohen is going to assume that his animal is kosher, and that's the problem. So it's a gzeir d'rabbanan. And it's it's impossible. What are you talking about? Elam Rav, you know what the problem is? Mishum kavua. Pashit, if we're going to allow you to take kol the parish, well, where are you going to take it from the kavua as well? So this is a problem then. So when do we have the rule of kol the parish and rule parish? So that's what I was trying to saying before. Where the Shem explains the difference of kavua is the raisa, kavua is the rabbanon. If kavua is the raisa, in the case of the 10 stores, we're not worried that next time people will think, even if I walked into the store and I don't remember where I bought it, I'm allowed to eat it. Because it's a case where you know for sure there's one safe store. So something that Isa and with people are not going to treat it lightly, and therefore we don't. If you found in the street, we don't have to say, "Oh, if we're going to allow that next time, if he walks in the store, he'll forget." But where the kavu is hachak is only rabbanon anyway, like over here, because ma'atoida it should be bottled. Ma'atoida should all be bottled because all the animals are together, and we have a rule, that the chad b'tzrei bottle. No, but rabbanon machber. So there, people are going to treat it like if we're going to say once the animal walked away, it's all right. They'll say, and if they're all still together, it's still all right. So we're kvu is the rabbanon, we make this gzeda. We kvu is midraisa, we don't make this gzeda. Says the Gemara. By the way, this is important to know. So if kol kvu, I mean the Shimon Skop has big arichas in the kol kvu mercha merchadami, then what's the whole idea of bittul b'shishim and all these things? Kol kvu, it's all sitting there. There's a big difference where the Isser is not Nicker, when it's all sitting there to mix together, and therefore we say we have all the din of bittul and everything else, or where the Isser was Nicker, like in the case of the stores. Just you don't remember which store you bought it in, which is a very different kind of a case. Says the Gemara, comes along Rav and makes a chiddush, and says, Amar Rav, hashtag Amar Rabban, loy nakriv. Now that the Rabban came out and says that if there was one animal that's no good, mixed with a bunch of animals, right? So you can't use any of them. And the Rabbana go a step further. Even if it wandered away, even 90, we say that we are goyzer, that it's asur. There's a big machlek is showing what happened? The animal walked away on its own. Our whole Gemara is talking about nich b'shinu v'naidi. Why don't we do something to make it move around? And it's an eitzah. Okay, and we say we're goyzer mishum kavua. What about if you didn't do anything? One of the animals walked out. Do we then rely on kol the parish, or do we then say still there's a gzeida mishum kavua, and we're going to answer that animal as well? So big machlek yishim there as well. So what happened? Amar Rav says Rav, hashta the ami rabban loy nakriv. Now that the Chachamim say that you should not be makriv with this animal, even when you walked away, inakriv loy nakriv. If you makriv it, it's no good. All the Achrim talk about if the Torah said no, you got to bring another animal. The Torah says. You eat your carbon, and the Rabbanon say, "Now bring another carbon." It's like chulim ba'azara. This is in a proactive way. We know the Chacham come along and say, "Shabbat Taisa, don't do the don't blow shayfar on Shana." But here the Chacham tell you to bring another carbon. So this is in a kumbah say. How can the Chacham do that? So some want to say what Rav is saying here is only as far as eating the animal. You cannot eat this. Chacham said, the kohen cannot eat the parts and whatever. But the person is nischaper because the Chacham can't come along and say, bring another carbon. Others want to say, the Chachamim really are saying in Shaval Taisa that this animal is no good. The Totzah is Kumba says. It's not that they're telling you go ahead and do something against the Torah. And maybe this does not fall under the gather of Kumba rather than Shaval Taisa. Eisvei Rav Huna Bar Yehuda Rav. Huna Bar Yehuda asked a question to Rava. So this big chiddush, that we're told not to bring this animal, and the Rabbanon, but Torah's all right. But if you did it, you're not Yaitzer. Let me ask you a question. We learned chatas and its arba ba'olam. Let's say by birds we're talking about here, right? We're talking about birds here by animals. If there's a problem, kabbalah get mixed up. We learned before you let it wander about until it has a mum. And then you sell it, and then with the money, you buy the you buy the new carbonas to replace it, and you assume that the animal that each carbon animal was the most money, so therefore you have to supplement whatever it is that you to make that reach an amount. But by birds, there's no such thing as wander about and sell it. There ain't padiyah ba'ifus. So what happened with two birds? One was an oila bird, and one was a chatas bird. They got mixed up. So chatas and his arba ba'oila. Chatas got mixed up with an oila birds. The oila and his arba b'chatas, so an oila mixed up with the chatas. Afila achas b'riboy. One bird with many others. Now you can't bring them up because there's a lot of shenuyim in the zrika. Main thing is where you do above the line, below the line, and so on. So what are you supposed to do? Is it musa? You have no breda. You can't wait till it has a mum because you can't do anything with it anyway. So you must to kula. So one oila got mixed up with 10,000 chatois, or vice versa. You must to kula. So that's what we're telling you to do. What? There's another mission now. If the kohen asks us what to do, how will the kohen nimlach? He doesn't consult. He passes for himself. Also, he went ahead and he did it. Also, if he did all the birds above the line, now we're assuming it's 1 and 1. So one was an oiler, one was a chattas. If he did them both above the line, so yeah, well, you yaitze the oiler bird, but you're not yaitze the chattas bird, because the chattas bird has to be done below the line. He's also l'mayla machsa kosher or machsa posel. Yes, you yaitze the oiler, now you the chattas. Lamata, you did it below the line, same thing. Machsa kosher, machsa posel. You yaitze the chattas bird, but you're not yaitze the oiler bird. You sprayed one above below, you made it worse. Because how do you know which one ended up where? They're both puzzle. Because I say we had this a while ago. Maybe you did the oil bird below the line and the chatz bird above the line. So what's the kasha? Here the Mishnah says don't do it. But then we said the kohen did it anyway, you still yaitza. You rather just said when we tell you not to do it. If you did it, it doesn't work. And here clearly it says we told you not to do it, and you did it, and it worked. How does the Rabbi explain that? Says the Gemara. The Rabbi says very simply. There's a machlekes where the Balachayim, we even had this before the Gemara as well. If Balachayim nitchin or not, we know that once an animal is geschachten already, nitche, once it's nitche. But what happens if while the animal was alive it was nitche? So machlekes tanoim. So this Mishnah holds that since the problem, the oil and the chatz was while it was still alive, they got mixed up. So therefore, this Mishnah holds that the first Mishnah holds that it's nitchen, the second Mishnah holds that it's not nitchen. Simple. He says it. And when the second Mishnah that says that the kohen did it is all right, he's talking about they were never nitchen. Because when they got mixed up, there was a problem, but it was balachayim. So therefore, you could use this ton of holes, that you could use the blood and whatever it is and continue going. So it's not balachayim, but never nitche. Says the and that's and I'm talking about the balachayim nitche, says the Rabbi, and therefore that's it. Once it's for fallen. And that mission that says don't do it is going according to the mission that balachayim and nitche. So you can't do it at all. You can't do it. Yeah. So the Gemara. We learned Rabbi Lezer says, now where do we see this? Rabbi Lezer says, Im karev haroi shel echad mehen. What happens if you a bunch of oil got mixed up, one of them is no good? If the roi shel echad, once if you brought up one oil already on the mizbeach, we'll say, you know what? Probably that oiler that you put on the mizbeach, the head of one of those, is probably the one that was possible, and we'll assume the rest are kosher. We're going to assume the rest are kosher. Now, a minute ago they were all together. You couldn't bring any of the oilers on the mizbeach because one of them was possible. Nevertheless, now that you did it, now that you put one head on the mizbeach, we'll say, that's probably the one that was possible, and the rest you can go ahead. So we see that Rabbi Lezer holds that they're not nitche. Because otherwise, once they were not allowed to bring them as mizbeach, for found. And if you already brought one of the heads of the oilers, and yikru kol harashim, you could bring up all the heads. So the chayz akasha Rabba, we'll see in a second that we see clearly here that even though you did it, you shouldn't have done it, but if you did it, it's all right. So we're going to say again that he holds that bale chayim are not nitche, and who holds that? Who the omer kechona mitzi. This view is that Bala Chaim are not nitche. Sorry, we're going a step further. Bala Chaim was not nitche, fine. But here we have another problem. Here already was geschachten. He was already geschachten. It's not Bala Chaim, and all the oils got mixed up together after already he was geschachten. So that means all of them were disqualified. Not just a question of Bala Chaim anymore. Here we're talking about the rest of the animals that were geschachten, and they were not disqualified. And yet Rabbi Lezer says that if you put it on top of the mizbeach, one of them will assume that's the one that was possible. Everything else is good. But everyone holds that we know there's a concept of dichui once it's geschachten. The question is, balachayim while I was alive, do we say nitz or not? So how is Rabbi going to explain this? Rabbi says when we tell you not to do it, and if you did it, fa'falon, it's not going to work. Clearly here that it does work. Says the Gemara, who the amma kechana mitzvah? There is one day that even after it's geschachten, it's not nitche. What's this Ma'aser Chana Mitzvah? We're talking about Yom Kippur. You have to bring the Seila Chatas. This that you bring inside, and the Seila Azazel. You have two Chatoyas, and they're all interlinked one with another. So we all say that if one of them dies, whatever it is, you got to we had a bit three shittas there. Wait, you have to start all over again. The Chana Mitzvah goes to the extent to say that even if you you have the Chatas that was done in Pnim, you shechted it, the blood you already put in the keli, and then the Chatas that was supposed to go in the Azazel died. And so the now it's Nitzcha. That's it. You don't because you have to have both. It's nidcha. So what he says? So everyone else says you have to start
another one that matches.
Yeah, that's exactly. Everyone else says you have to start all again, and shecht again, and start again the chatzos apnim, and then the seir mishleach. He says no, just bring another one here and continue the process. What he says, it's not nidchi, even though it was already geshacht and everything else. So Rabbi Lezer, who says in the Mishnah that the head of one of the oilus of Bruno's Bech will assume that one is the apostle one, is just like a Chana Mitzi. But the Rabbi said, we're following the Chachamim that says that what? That it's, it's Nitzcha.
It's difficult, though, because the Shnei Seirim have to be identical.
Mada, Bekemos, and everything else. So you have to have good memories.
This one, while he's on the Mizbeach, he's burning. It's very hard to measure.
Good memories. I feel down because even the dam already the seir nasim fnim is already in a cup and everything else, and then the seir shalech dies, and so now the dam is nitche. He says that no, maybe chaveiro umezavigloy. All you got to do is bring another animal and you join the two together. It's not nitche. And now the Gemara will bring some more cases here, which we'll continue tomorrow, about things that probably bring back memories. Rings got mixed up with other rings and sfaksveka, tarubas. What's the din is, what the outcomes are. Okay, we'll stop over here.